All right, welcome everybody. We're going to do something a little different today. We're going to learn 3 chapters of Talmud. Why are we doing this? Glad you asked. So let me share screen and we'll go here to a book called The Talmud Unmasked. Somebody put this in the comment section of my YouTube videos, which, by the way, if you're watching this and you're one of the ones in the Messenger group, I have added some videos to my channel, which I did not share there. So there's probably some content there you have not seen. All right, The Talmud Unmasked. What is it? It's basically a book written by this guy, Justinus Pranaitis, I guess is how you pronounce it. I'm not really sure. I'm a Lithuanian Catholic priest. The book is a collection of purported quotations from the Talmud and the Zohar that are claimed to demonstrate that Judaism despises non Jews and promotes the murder and inquiry of non Jews in some instances. He drew on earlier works from these other people. So, scholars classify the Talmud Unmasked as an anti Semitic, anti Talmudic work comparable to other books that don't like us. Modern authors agree that this guy Pranaitis, I'm guessing that's how you pronounce it, was not competent in Aramaic, just like most of the people who, put these types of quotes in comment sections. And the work contains mistranslations, plagiarism from those earlier works. All right, this I found interesting because, people that make these claims, there's like some people, obviously not all, but there are some people who claim to be Christians and they put quotes which they copied and pasted from somewhere else they found on the internet to say, well, the Talmud, this, that, and the other, and oftentimes they don't even know what their own religion says. They can't even tell you what's in the New Testament, but they're an expert on Talmud, a book that they've never read once in their life. But they're just copying and pasting quotes from people like this guy who also never read the Talmud. And we know this because in 1913, there was a trial where he testified as an expert witness who made claims like Jews require blood for Passover. He was made to look foolish by a journalist and historian, Benzion Katz, who devised a set of questions for defense attorneys to ask him on basic information about the Talmud. He phrased the question as though Baba Batra, this B here, and Baba is the letter Bet, which can also be pronounced like a V, is the letter Bet. It's the same letter. So Baba or Bava, we're saying the same thing. And Batra, there's 3 of them: Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Baba Batra. Okay. He ans- he he phrased the question as though Baba Batra was a person, even though it's talking about gates, not an individual. Even though it's a Talmudic tractate that this guy cites, he didn't know any of the information on the stand and answered that he didn't know without even noticing the Baba Batra trick, showing he completely lacked Talmudic expertise that he claimed. Um, so anyway, this is what people do. So I got a comment on my YouTube channel here, the Talmud Unmasked. I never heard of it till I saw this comment. So the first source that he claims is the Zohar, not even in Talmud. Bava Metzia, he misspells using an N instead of an M. He doesn't even consistently misspell it. He spells it both times. He quotes it differently. So Kiddushin 29b. I want you to know that I have the actual copy of, make sure I go on the camera, Tractate Kiddushin from the Talmud Bava. Okay, I'm not just relying on something I found on the internet like that guy did. I actually have that. So let's go back to sharing the screen where he claims right here in Kiddushin 29b, a woman is a sack full of poop. I've never heard this even claimed anywhere before, but since he's mistaking, how to even spell Bava Metzia, I want to read Kiddushin 29b because he makes this claim that we're going to find it here. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, which he probably doesn't deserve. So let's look at Kiddushin 29a and Kiddushin 30a. So the quote that he's claiming, we're going to read that section. We're also going to read the section before and after to see if his source is wrong. All right. So Let's look up Kiddushin 29a, and let's see if this evil Talmud claims what he says it's going to claim. Now, remember, his source is, even though he's never read this, he's quoting a book where somebody who also never read this claims that we're going to find it here. So that's his source. So let's see what we find. All right, Tammy, did you say you were going to volunteer 29A?
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Until he pulls or takes possession of it. Additionally, the temple treasury has the following advantage. If a commoner pulled a consecrated item for the purpose of acquiring it with 100 dinars, and he
Yeah,
did
it's a
not
form of
manage,
money, like Roman coins for anyone that
yeah, but
doesn't
do
know.
you pronounce it dinars?
I think it's called dinars.
Okay,
Dinar.
dinars. He did not manage to redeem it by paying the 100 dinars to the temple treasurer before the item's price stood at 200 dinars. He gives 200 dinars. What is the reason for this? It states he will give the money and it will be assured to him. See Leviticus 27:19. This indicates that one can acquire an item from the temple treasury only by the actual transfer of money. By contrast, in the reverse case, when the commoner pulled an item when it was worth 200 dinars and he did not manage to redeem it before the value of the item stood at 100 dinars, he gives 200 dinars. What is the reason for this? The power of the commoner should not be greater than that of temple treasury of consecrated property. Since a commoner completes his acquisition by pulling the item is required by him at that price. And the temple treasury should not suffer a loss in a case where the commoner could not have reneged on his commitment that he had been dealing with another commoner. Similarly, if the commoner redeemed it at 200 dinars, but he did not manage to pull it before its value stood at 100 dinars, he gives 200 dinars. What is the reason? It states he will give the money and it will be assured to him, which indicates that the redemption of consecrated property is effected with money. By contrast, if he redeemed it at 100 dinars and did not manage to pull it before it stood at 200 dinars, what he redeemed is redeemed and he gives only 100 dinars. The Gemara asks, why is this the halakha? So too, let us say the power of the commoner should not be greater than that of the temple treasury of consecrated property. And if it has occurred in a case where he was dealing with another commoner, he would need to pay a full 200 dinars, which was the value of an item when he pulled it. Shouldn't the temple treasury have as much power as a common person? The
So this
Gemara
word halakha, sorry, I just want to make sure I have the vocabulary for anyone watching that doesn't know it. Why is this the halakha? This is Jewish law, not from the Torah. The law from the Torah is mitzvot, Torah commandments. Halakha is laws enacted by the Sanhedrin. It was like the Congress and Supreme Court combined. They debate what should the law be. They vote. The majority wins. That becomes the halakha or the law. And it's also like the Supreme Court at the same time, where it makes sure that it's the law is constitutional. Well, in this case, is in compliance with the Torah instead of the Constitution. So if you think about American government, it's like laws enacted by Congress that have been signed into law by the president. That's the equivalent of halakha. Okay. Oh, and the Gemara. So in the Talmud, the Mishnah, this is the generation of the Tanaim. That's who had smicha going back to Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what gave them the authority to judge. The Amoraim is the next generation. These are the opinions that we're finding in the Gemara. So the Gemara is the Amoraim commenting on the Mishnah, which is the generation of the Tanaim. So that's what the authoritative part of the Talmud is the Mishnah. Unfortunately, it's not always clear, so sometimes we have to have clarity, and that's what the Gemara is trying to do. They're trying to discuss and provide clarity for questions that came up. Okay, go ahead. I mean, is that clear?
Okay,
Does anybody have any questions on that?
That's
Okay, I just want to
clear.
make sure everybody understands the vocabulary. Okay, go ahead, Tammy. I apologize for interrupting.
the Gemara answers this is an additional impediment to reneging on an agreement with another commoner. Is that to say that that a commoner who gave a seller money and changed his mind before acquiring the item is not forced to accept upon himself the curse of he who exacted payment from a generation of the flood? See Genesis chapter 7. And the generation of dispersion. See Genesis chapter 11. Will punish one who does not keep his word. Although a commoner can legally renege on his agreement at this stage, the sages disapprove of such dishonest conduct, and one who did so would be cursed in this manner. Consequently, the power of a commoner is not greater than that of the temple's treasury, as it is not simple matter to renege on an agreement with another commoner.
All right, so we're already disapproving of dishonest conduct. So that seems to be a positive message that we're getting so far. Okay, again, the Mishnah. This is the authoritative part of the Talmud because this is the generation of the Tanaim, which had authority to judge. That's called smicha. And mitzvot, again, Torah commandments. So this mitzvot, we're discussing laws from the Torah, not halacha. Halacha is later. It's from the judges that sat on the court called the Sanhedrin. So here, this is where we're going to read what the Mishnah says, and then the Gemara is commenting on it.
Mishnah, with regard to all mitzvah of a son with regard to his father, men are obligated to perform them and women are exempt.
All right, why are women exempt? We're going to
Didn't we
learn
just
that.
say that mitzvah are Torah laws?
Yes.
Well, how are women exempt from Torah laws?
So the Torah just gives you the laws, and then the halacha is what tells us how do we enact them. Like the Torah gives you a law, don't violate the Shabbat rest. So where do we get 39 melachot, prohibited labors from? That's the halacha. If you just went by the Torah, then we would say, what does it mean not to violate the Shabbat rest? Does this mean on Shabbat we do the same thing that we do every other day of the week, but on Shabbat we also take a nap? This is where halacha comes in, and they tell us how do we enact these mitzvot. So are all mitzvot applicable to everybody? Men, women, children, in the land and outside of the land? What about apostates who have been cut off from their people? These are all valid questions that come up. And this is why the Torah gives us mitzvot, like the mitzvah of lo tasor, not to stray to the left or the right of the rulings of the court. When these questions come up, the court is going to tell us how do we proceed. And we're going to learn in here the answer to your question. How do we know that women are exempt? And that answer is about to come up.
Okay. And with regard to all mitzvah of the father, with regard to a son, both men and women are obligated to perform them. The Mishnah notes an additional difference between the obligations of men and women in the performance of a mitzvah. With regard to all positive time bound mitzvah, i.e., those which must be performed at specific times, men are obligated to perform them and women are exempt. And with regard to all positive mitzvah that are not time bound, both men and women are obligated to perform them.
Okay, so usually, not all, but usually women are exempt from a positive time-bound mitzvah. Positive mitzvah is something you do, put on tefillin. A negative mitzvah is something you do not do. Do not steal. So time-bound, when do we put on tefillin? When it's light outside, light enough that you can recognize a friend at what is it, 4 amot, a short distance. That's the time to do it when the sun comes up. Tzitzit, when do we put them on? When you can distinguish between the techelet and the white threads of the tzitzit. There's a time to do it. So if it is a positive, time-bound mitzvah, women are usually exempt and men are obligated. That's halacha. Torah mitzvah doesn't tell you this. It doesn't say this is for men and women don't have to do it. These are the laws enacted by the Sanhedrin. That's the halacha, is that women are exempt. Now, there are Torah commandments that tell us to listen to that court. In matters of controversy, do according to what the court instructs you. It's not just any court, it's a specific court, the Sanhedrin. So there are Torah commandments that tell us to follow the halacha. So this was a matter of controversy. It went to the court, just like we appeal things up to the Supreme Court. These things were decided by the Supreme Court of this time, the Sanhedrin, and that's what they ruled. Positive time-bound mitzvot, women are exempt. Now, just because you're exempt from it doesn't mean you're prohibited. I mean, you're busy taking care of children and taking care of the household. And what are we going to do? So you failed to perform a mitzvah. You didn't put tefillin on this morning while you were giving birth to a child. Of course not. So just because you're not obligated to do it does not mean you're prohibited. It's not like you're committing some sin if you put on tefillin. King David's wife wore tefillin. They say Rashi's granddaughter wore tefillin. It's not prohibited. Um, so obviously you don't want to do something that is prohibited, but just because you're not obligated to do something does not mean it's that you're prohibited. It just means there's no punishment if you don't do it because you're not obligated to.
I think
Okay?
that's where a lot of people get confused, Rabbi. They think that prohibited or that they're not obligated means they don't have to do it at all. We're still encouraged to perform the mitzvah. We just don't have that time restriction.
Correct. It's like saying Jews don't live in Alaska. Okay, maybe not, but can we? Are we prohibited? No. Just because we're not doing something doesn't mean we can't, you know? So that's where one of the things I'm big on is clarity of language, separating mitzvot from halachot, from minhagim, humrot. Yeah, if you're gonna tell me there's a prohibition against it, you're gonna have to show it to me, and it's not prohibited. So yeah, it's exactly as you described. All right, let's continue.
And with regard to all prohibitions, whether they are time bound or whether they are not time bound, both men and women are obligated to observe them, except for the prohibitions of do not round the corners of your head and do not destroy the corners of your beard, which are derived from the verse, you shall not round the corners of your head and you shall not destroy the corners of your beard, Leviticus 19:27, and a prohibition that concerns only priests. Do not contract ritual impurity from a corpse, Leviticus 21:1. These mitzvah apply only to men, not women, despite the fact that they are prohibitions.
This came up recently in a conversation about touching the corpse of a pig. Um, According to the Torah, you would be impure and have to be outside of the camp until nightfall. That's not the same thing as a prohibition against eating that corpse. You don't eat pork, but touching it makes you ritually impure. Um, so you would have to wait to come in. And to tell you the truth, laws of purity and impurity for things like this, I mean, we don't have the ashes of the red heifer, so we don't really have a way to rectify that anyway. But as we see here, that's talking about a priest, because the priest had to be ritually pure. So I did find that interesting. All right, so the Gemara is the commentary to the Mishnah. This is the latter generation of the Amoraim commenting on the Tanaim that gave us the Mishnah. So let's see what their commentary is. What do they have to say about this?
Gemara. The Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the phrase, all mitzvah of a son with regard to his father? If we say it is referring to all mitzvah that the son is obligated to perform with regard to his father, are women exempt from obligations of this kind? But isn't it taught in the Berita concerning
All
the
right, real
verse?
quick. Baraita, again, the Mishnah is the authoritative part of the Talmud because that's the Tanaim, the generation that had smicha going back to Moses. That's what gave them the authority to judge. The Amoraim is the next generation. That's the generation of the Gemara that did not have that smicha. So a Baraita is Mishnaic era literature. That's the same generation as the Mishnah, the Tanaim, but this is information that did not make it into the Mishnah. Okay, that's the Sifri, the Safra, the Mechilta, and the Tosefta. Mishnaic era literature that's not in the Mishnah. So it would be like saying, okay, today we want to comment on something that the founding fathers wrote. Okay, well, we weren't there. We're reading what they wrote and commenting on it. But there were other people who were there that knew these authors that wrote their own books. That would be like a Baraita. So if you want to argue against the Mishnah, you have to quote a Baraita. So even though we're reading the Gemara, this is the Amoraim generation that did not have smicha. What they're doing here is they're quoting a Baraita, something outside of the Mishnah. And so they're arguing against the Mishnah, but they have to quote something that's from the same generation, the same people that had smicha. So hopefully that makes sense. But that's what this is when you see Baraita. That's what they're referring to. So my first question, when somebody quotes the Talmud, my first question is it from the Gemara or the Mishnah? Because the Mishnah is what has weight. But if they say it's in the Gemara, it can have weight if they're quoting a Baraita, if that makes sense.
I think y'all have too many books.
We do have a lot. That's one thing we were very good at, is writing things down. But that's not, that's a good problem to have. Okay, continue if you would.
In a Baraita concerning the verse that deals with the mitzvah of honoring one's father and mother, a man shall fear Terau, his mother and his father, Leviticus 19:3. I have derived only that a man is obligated in this mitzvah. From where do I derive that a woman is also obligated? When it says in the same verse, a man shall fear his mother and his father. Employing a plural form of the verb, this indicates that there are two that are obliged here, both a man and a woman.
And it makes sense. I mean, it's a positive mitzvah from the Torah. Honor your mother and your father. It's not time bound. If it's the sun goes down, now I can you know, dishonor your parents because you're female. So it makes sense.
When man is mentioned in scripture, isn't it mankind?
Um,
Like when they
it's a,
say a man shall fear, doesn't it mean mankind shall fear?
um, I'm pretty sure there's more than one way to read it because you have Adom, or where Adam comes from, man created from the earth, but then you also have Ish, a man, an individual man, like Ish and Isha, man and woman. So we'd have to examine a specific passage, but there's more than one way. Even though Hebrew is a more concise language, biblical Hebrew, there is more than one way to say things in Hebrew.
Okay, Rob Yehuda said that this is what the Mishnah is saying. With regard to all mitzvah of a son that are incumbent upon his father to perform for his son, men are obligated in them and women are exempt. The Gemara comments, according to this interpretation, we learn in this Mishnah that which the sages taught, excuse me, in the Baraita, a father is obligated with regard to his son to circumcise him and to redeem him. If he is a firstborn son, who must be redeemed by payment to a priest, and to teach him Torah, and to marry him to a woman, and to teach him a trade. And some say the father is also obligated to teach his son to swim. Rabbi Yehuda says any father who does not teach his son a trade teaches him banditry. The Gemara expresses surprise at the statement. Can it enter your mind that he actually teaches him banditry?
So
Rather, the Baraita means that it is as though he teaches him banditry. Since the son has no profession with which to support himself, he is likely to turn to theft for a livelihood. This Baraita accords with Rav Yehuda's interpretation of the Mishnah.
right, so there's a couple interesting things here. As a Rambamist, I don't think any Jewish kid should be allowed to graduate high school without going to Mishnah Torah at least one time. And this is one of the interesting conversations that we find in there. The Rambam goes through the Mishnah, the Gemara, in both the Babylonian Talmud and the Jerusalem Talmud. He goes through all the Baraitot, the Sifri, the Sfarad, the Chilta, the Tosefta. He goes through all of it and he extracts halacha. And this halacha, he says that the son is the one obligated to be circumcised. So obviously, an 8-day-old child can't circumcise himself. So the father is given an opportunity to do that for the son. But if for some reason the father leaves, shame on him. Or if he's killed in battle, now the son doesn't have a father. What happens when the son is grown up and he's not circumcised? He is obligated to be circumcised. So for whatever reason, the father does not fulfill this mitzvah for his son. The obligation is on the son to be circumcised. So I found that to be an interesting conversation, and Rambam again gives us the final halacha. And the other thing, he says, even for a rabbi, Rambam says it is shameful for a rabbi to be dependent on his community financially. He should have a job, just like all of the sages in the Talmud did. They were wood choppers, and they had different professions. And if you don't teach your son a trade, look at what can happen. What's he supposed to do? He doesn't know how to do anything. He could become a bandit. So I found that interesting. Now, is this where Rambam derives it from? We don't know. Rambam didn't give us the sources. It could have been from somewhere else that he gives us that halakha. This is what the Kesef Mishnah is. Yosef Karo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, wrote the Kesef Mishnah, where he tries to find the source of each halakha that Rambam gives us. This could be the source for that halakha. But unfortunately, Rambam didn't tell us where exactly he got it from, so it could be from somewhere else. But I found that to be interesting. Okay, go ahead.
The Baraita teaches that a father is obligated to circumcise his son. The Gemara asks, from where do we derive this? The Gemara answers that this is as it is written, and Abraham circumcised his son Isaac, Genesis 21:4. The Gemara comments, and in a case where one's father did not circumcise him, the court is obligated to circumcise him, i.e., if his obligation is not fulfilled by the father, it applies to the community as a whole. As it is written, every male among you shall be circumcised. Genesis 17:10. In the form of general mitzvah, what does not apply only to the father? That does not apply only to the father, and in a case where the court did not circumcise him, the son is obligated to circumcise himself when he reaches adulthood, as it is written, and the uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that soul shall be cut off from his people. Genesis 17:14. From where do we derive that his mother is not obligated to circumcise her son, as it is written, and Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, and God commanded him. Genesis 21:4. The verse emphasized that God commanded him and not her. We found a source of the mitzvah immediately, i.e., when it was given to Abraham. From where do we derive this is the halakha for the men of all generations. The school of Rabbi Yishmael taught that any place where it is stated command, it is nothing other than an expression of galvanization, both immediately and for generations. The mitzvah of circumcision is present by means of this term. The Gemara elaborates, from where is it derived that the term command indicates a galvanized as it is written? And command Joshua and encourage him and strengthen him. Deuteronomy 3:28. In this context, the term command is not referring to a specific command, but is a general expression of galvanization. From where it is derived from this implies immediately and for generations, as it is written, from the day of the Lord commanded and onward throughout the generations. Numbers 15:23. This shows that whatever the word command is used, it is referring to the day onward for all generations. The Berita teaches that a father is obligated to redeem his son. The Gemara asks, from where do we derive this? The Gemara answers, this is as it is written, all the firstborns of your sons shall be redeemed. Exodus 34:20. And in a case where one's father does not redeem him, he is obligated to redeem himself, as it is written, you shall redeem. Paro tifti. Numbers 18:15. The repetition of the verb indicates that the firstborn is required to be redeemed in any case, even if his father neglects to do so. And from where do we derive that a mother is not commanded to redeem her son? As it is written, you shall redeem, which can be read as, you shall be redeemed. This indicates that whoever is commanded to redeem himself is commanded to redeem others, and whoever is not commanded to redeem himself is not commanded to redeem others. Since a woman is not commanded to redeem herself, she is not commanded to redeem her son either. The Gemara asks, and from where do we derive that she is not obligated to redeem herself? The Gemara answers that this is as it is written, you shall redeem, which you can be read as, you shall be redeemed. This indicates that any person whom others are commanded to redeem is commanded to redeem himself. And any person from others are not commanded to redeem is not commanded to redeem himself. Since there is no mitzvah for a parent to redeem his daughter, there is similarly no mitzvah for a daughter to redeem herself. And from where it is derived that others are not commanded to redeem a daughter, as this verse states, all the firstborn of your sons shall be redeemed. Your sons and not your daughters. Oh my gosh. The sages taught if a firstborn has not yet been redeemed, and he himself has a firstborn son, he is obligated to redeem himself, and he is also obligated to redeem his firstborn son, and he takes precedence over his son. If he does not have enough money to redeem both of them, he redeems himself. Rabbi Yehuda says his son takes precedence over him. Rabbi Yehuda's reasoning is that with regard to this one, the father the mitzvah of his redemption and upon his father, and only when his father did not observe the mitzvah did it apply to the adult son. And the mitzvah of the redemption of his firstborn son applies to him directly, consequently, and he should first fulfill the mitzvah and applies to him by redeeming his son. Yabba Yerma says everyone agrees. No, everyone does not. Sorry.
No, everybody does not agree on anything. Correct. All right. Thank you, Tammy. That was great. All right. So now we have the context. This is 29b. This is where we claim that women are like, what it said. I think Ash was going to read this one. This is where we're supposed to find this quote.
That anywhere that there are only 5 stella available, i.e., enough to redeem only one man, and one is obligated to redeem both himself and his son, he, the father, takes precedence over his son. What is the reason? It is that his own mitzvah is preferable to one that he performs on behalf of others. When they disagree is in a case where there is land worth 5 selah that is liened property that has been sold, i.e., he sold this land to other people, but it can be reclaimed by his prior creditor, and 5 selah, which is entirely unsold property. And the reasoning behind the dispute is as follows. Rabbi Yehuda maintains that a loan that is written in the Torah, i.e., any financial obligation that applies by Torah law, is considered as though it is written in a document, and therefore it can be collected from liened property like any loan recorded in a document. This means that the liened property worth 5 selah is available for one's own redemption, but not for that of his son, as the sale of the property occurred before the birth of his firstborn. Consequently, with these 5 selah upon which there is no lien, he redeems his son, and the priest goes and repossesses the land worth 5 selah that is lien property for his own redemption. In this manner, one can fulfill both mitzvot. And the rabbis maintain a loan that is written in the Torah is not considered as though it is written in a document, since buyers will not be aware of this obligation, so that they should be aware that the land may be repossessed. And therefore, there is no advantage for this man to redeem his son with the 5 selah upon which there is no lien, and his own mitzvah is preferable, which means he can redeem himself with the free land. With the lien property that is left, he cannot redeem his son, as the land was sold before the birth of his firstborn. The sages taught if one has money to redeem his son and to ascend to Jerusalem on the pilgrimage festival, he redeems his son and then ascends to Jerusalem on the pilgrimage festival. Rabbi Yehuda says he ascends to Jerusalem on the pilgrimage festival and then redeems his son. His reasoning is that this trip to Jerusalem for the pilgrimage festival is a mitzvah whose time soon passes, and this, the redemption of the firstborn son, is a mitzvah whose time does not soon pass, as it can be fulfilled later. The Gemara asks, granted according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, it is as he stated in his reasoning, i.e. Rabbi Yehuda provided the rationale for his opinion. But what is the reasoning of the rabbis who say that he should first redeem his son? The Gemara answers that the reason is that the verse states, all the firstborn of your sons you shall redeem. Exodus 34:20. And it then states in the same verse, and none shall appear before me empty, referring to the pilgrimage festival in Jerusalem. The order of the verse indicates that one should redeem his firstborn son before traveling to Jerusalem on the pilgrimage festival. The sages taught from where it is derived that if one had 5 firstborn sons from 5 different women, he is obligated to redeem them all. The verse states, all the firstborn of your sons you shall redeem. And the emphasis of all, one moment, and the emphasis of all includes any of one's firstborn sons. The Gemara asks, isn't it obvious this is the case? After all, the merciful ones made this mitzvah dependent upon the opening of the womb, as it states, sanctify to me all the firstborn, whoever opens the womb. Exodus 13:2. Since each of these sons is the firstborn of his mother, it is clear that the father is required to redeem each of them. The Gemara answers that this ruling is necessary lest you say that we should derive a verbal analogy between firstborn stated here and firstborn from the verses dealing with inheritance. Just as there, the verse describes a firstborn who receives a double portion of the inheritance as the first fruit of his strength. Devarim 21:17, i.e., he is the firstborn son to his father and not the first child born to his mother. So too here, with regard to the redemption of the firstborn, it is referring to the first fruit of his strength, which would mean that the father need redeem only his eldest child. Therefore, this Baraita teaches us that this is not the case. Rather, every firstborn son to his mother must be redeemed. The Baraita teaches that a father is obligated to teach his son Torah. The Gemara asks, from where do we derive this requirement? As it is written, and you shall teach them, Belametin, to your sons, Devarim 11:19. And in a case where his father did not teach him, he is obligated to teach himself, as it is written, i.e., the verse can be read with a different vocalization, and you shall study, Olmatem.
Okay, so again, I'll point out this is a Torah commandment. We are to teach them to our children, teach his son. Nowhere do I see any type of prohibition to say that, well, not your daughters. We can't let them read Torah.
From where do we derive that a woman is not obligated to teach her son Torah? As it is written, and you shall teach Belamatim, which can be read as, and you shall study Olmatem. This indicates that whoever is commanded to study Torah is commanded to teach, and whoever is not commanded to study is not commanded to teach. Since a woman is not obligated to learn Torah, she is likewise not obligated to teach it.
Okay, not obligated does not mean prohibited. It just means you're not violating anything if you don't do it. There's no punishment that we can give you because there was no prohibition. You didn't violate anything.
The Gemara asks, and from where do we derive that she is not obligated to teach herself? The Gemara answers, as it is written, and you shall teach, which can be read as, and you shall study, which indicates that whoever others are commanded to teach is commanded to teach himself, and whoever others are not commanded to teach is not commanded to teach himself. And from where it is derived that others are not commanded to teach a woman, as the verse states, and you shall teach them to your sons. Devarim 11:19, which emphasizes your sons and not your daughters.
Although I'll remind you, for Purim, women are obligated to hear the Megillah, and anyone who is obligated to hear the Megillah can read the Megillah and fulfill the obligation. You can fulfill your obligation by hearing anyone read it who is obligated to hear it. And because they're obligated to hear it, they're able to read it. Meaning, as a woman, you are obligated to hear the Megillah read. So because you are obligated to hear it, you are able to read it. And if you, as a woman, read the Megillah, any man who hears you read the Megillah can fulfill his obligation to hear it by listening to you, the woman, read the Megillah. So why would this be any different from Torah?
The sages taught if one wishes to study Torah himself and his son also wants to study, he takes precedence over his son. Rabbi Yehuda says, if his son is diligent and sharp and his study will endure, his son takes precedence over him. This is like that anecdote which is told about Rab Yaakov, son of Rab Aha Bar Yaakov, whose father sent him to Abiah to study Torah. When the son came home, his father saw that his studies were not sharp as he was insufficiently bright. Rab Aha Bar Yaakov said to his son, I am preferable to you, and it is better that I go and study. Therefore, you sit and handle the affairs of the house so that I can go and study. Abiah heard that Rab Aha Bar Yaakov was coming. There was a certain demon in the study hall of Abiah, which was so powerful that when two people would enter, they would be harmed, even during the day. Abiah said to the people of the town, do not give Rab Aha Bar Yaakov lodging, ushpiza, so that he will be forced to spend the night in the study hall. Since Rab Aha Bar Yaakov is a righteous man, perhaps a miracle will occur on his behalf, and he will kill the demon. Rav Aha found no place to spend the night, and he entered and spent the night in that study hall of the sages. The demon appeared to him like a serpent with 7 heads. Rav Aha Bar Yaakov began to pray, and with every bow that he bowed, one of the demon's heads fell off until it eventually died. The next day, Rav Aha said to the townspeople, if a miracle had not occurred, you would have placed me in danger. The sages taught if one has to decide whether to study Torah or to marry a woman, what should he do first? He should study Torah and afterward marry a woman. If it is impossible for him to be without a wife, he should marry a woman and then study Torah. Rav Yehuda said that Shemuel says the halacha is that one should marry a woman and afterward study Torah.
So this is an example. I don't remember if I said it in the previous video or this one, where Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says. I mean, in today, this would be called, in a court, this would be called hearsay. So you have to trust that Shmuel taught it correctly to Rav Yehuda. He understood it correctly and is now transmitting it correctly.
And it's a credible source.
Exactly.
Rabbi Yochanan says, how can one do this? With a millstone hanging from his neck, i.e., with the responsibility of providing for his family weighing upon him, can he engage in Torah study? The Gemara comments, and the Amoraim do not disagree. This is for us, and that is for them. In other words, one statement applies to the residents of Babylonia, whereas the other is referring to those living in Eretz Israel.
Two different, I mean, this is why we have the Yerushalmi, which is called the Jerusalem Talmud, which was not written in Jerusalem. They moved over to Yavna, that I think was written in Tiberias, but it indicates it was written in the land of Israel. The Babylonian Talmud was written about 100 years later. It's also called the Bavli because this is where they were in Babylonia, and this is where most Jews were. And because it's 100 years later, they had time to comment on the Yerushalmi. And there were different traditions in different communities. This is one of the things that they discuss is how do you guys handle this? What do you guys see as important?
They making a differentiation between people who are in exile and versus people who are actually in the land.
Yes, the Yerushalmi was written in the land, and the Bavli was actually in Babylonia. And different communities had different things that they. So that's why the Mishnah is the same. It's
Mhm.
the rulings of the court. The Gemara is different. The Yerushalmi is that community's commentary on the Mishnah. The Bavli is the Babylonians' uh, commentary to the Mishnah. So two Talmuds, same Mishnah, different Gemara.
With regard to marriage, the Gemara relates Rav Hista would praise Rav Hamuna to Rav Huna by saying that he is a great man. Rav Huna said to him, "When he comes to you, send him to me." When Rav Hamuna came before him, Rav Huna saw that he did not cover his head with a cloth, as
The
Torah
Talit,
scholars did.
the Talit Gadol. This is
Mhm.
the Torah scholars were the ones that came up with this, and they'd sit in the Sanhedrin with it. That's what this is referring to.
The Tali Gadol.
Yep.
Rav Huna said to him, "What is the reason that you do not cover your head with a cloth?" Rav Hamnuna said to him, "The reason is that I am not married, and it was not customary for unmarried men to cover their heads with a cloth." Rav Huna turned his face away from him in rebuke, and he said to him, "See to it that you do not see my face until you marry."
So this is an
Oof.
insight to where some communities have that tradition that you don't put on a talit until you get married.
Mhm. Well, then they're shaming him for not being married.
Right. But remember the disagreement. One said you have to study Torah first because you can't study Torah if you're balancing, the obligations of the family. And then the other one said the opposite. You
Right.
know, so this is one of the things that they discuss.
The Gemara notes Rav Huna conforms to his standard line of reasoning as he says, if one is 20 years old and has not yet married a woman, all of his days will be in a state of sin concerning sexual matters. The Gemara asks, can it enter your mind that he will be in a state of sin all of his days? Rather say that this means the following. All of his days will be in a state of thoughts of sin, i.e., sexual thoughts. One who does not marry in his youth will become accustomed to thoughts of sexual matters, and the habit will remain with him the rest of his life. Interesting. Rava said, and similarly, the school of Rabbi Yishmael taught, until one reaches the age of 20 years, the Holy One, blessed be he, sits and waits for a man, saying, when will he marry a woman? Once he reaches the age of 20 and has not married, he says, let his bones swell, i.e., he is cursed, and God is no longer concerned about him.
I'm curious why you found that interesting. I mean, it's a Torah commandment. It's a mitzvah, for a man and a woman to become one and to be fruitful and multiply. I mean, this was like a gift of Hashem that He gave us.
Mhm.
You disagree?
Well, 20 years. I mean, that's pretty young. I mean, in
Uh,
today's standards, I mean, back then, no. But it was
yeah,
just
20 years.
interesting
You
that,
were usually married before then. You think 20 years is young? Read the next couple
Yeah.
lines.
yeah, yeah, I guess I'm making the mistake of thinking about today.
Yeah.
So Rav Hista said, the fact that I am superior to my colleagues is because I married at the age of 16. And if I would have married at the age of 14, I would say to the Satan, I would say to the Satan, an arrow in your eye, i.e., I would not be afraid of the evil inclination at all. So I'll stop there so Yana can take over.
All right. So the claim was that we were going to find this derogatory statement about women in 29b. We just read it. I didn't find anything negative about women. Certainly not the claim that that guy who was quoting a guy who wrote a book who proved that he never read it in court. Um, so this is why I would question your sources if you're gonna make these kind of things. But yeah, certainly not present. Okay, let's continue with one more to see if we find something in the chapter after the quoted source. Yana, you still with us?
Yes, I will say to the Satan, an arrow in your eye, I will not be afraid of the evil inclination at all. Ra Rava said to the Rabbi Natan Bar Ami, while your hand is still on your son's neck, while you still have authority and control over here, find him a wife. What is the appropriate age? From 16 until 22, and some say from 18 until 24.
Huh, that's interesting because there's people who don't read the Talmud that make claims about different ages, but we see here the ages are clearly stated, although there are people who dispute that, like like we'll see here.
The Gemara knows that this is like a dispute between Tana and Im, based on the verse, train a child in the way, give me 1 second. Train a child in the way that he should go. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nehemiah disagreed about the age in which the verse instructs the parent to educate his child. One said that the verse is referring to the ages from 16 until 22, 22, and one said it is referring to the ages from 18 until 24. The dispute concerning the correct age for marriage and the dispute about educating a child are the same, as while a father still has a large measure of influence over his son, he must both teach him and find him a wife. The Gemara contain The Gemara continues its discussion of a father's obligation to teach his son Torah. To what extent is a person obligated to teach his son Torah? Rav Yehuda, Rav Yehuda says, as Shemuel says, one should emulate the education of, for example, Zebulon ben Dan, a contemporary of Shemuel, whose father's father taught him Bible, Mishnah, Talmud, Halachot, and Agadot. The Gemara raises an objection from Baraita. If a father taught his son Bible, he is not required to teach him Mishnah. And Rava said in explanation of this Baraita, Bible is the Torah, not the prophets or writings, i.e., he is not required to teach him anything else, including Mishnah.
Okay. For example, okay. Mishnah, that's the Tanaim, that's the rulings of the Sanhedrin. Talmud is the Mishnah and the Gemara, but sometimes you'll hear people say Talmud as just the Gemara, but it's really Mishnah plus Gemara equals Talmud. Halachot, this is the plural of halacha, laws enacted by the Sanhedrin. Agadot, stories, non-legal stories, like what we read. I already forgot what it was we just read, but it's not like a law, not like a legal ruling. It's stories about this one had a conversation with that one and whatever. So then we have the different opinions here about what to teach, and I think it's going to expand on that. Yeah. Go ahead, Yana.
Isn't that the same paragraph?
No, we're using the same names and the same things here,
Uh,
but it's a different
okay,
paragraph.
just checking. The Gemara answers that Shemuel's statement should be understood as follows. One should teach his son like Zebulon ben Dan was taught in certain aspects, but not like Zebulon ben Dan in other respects. One should teach his son like Zebulon ben Dan in that his father's fathers taught him, but not like Zebulon ben Dan, as there he was taught Bible, Mishnah, Talmud, Halachot, and Agadot, while here in the Baraita, one is required to teach his son Bible alone.
All right, so the debate is how much are we obligated to teach? Do you have to be like an expert at everything, or is it just the Torah that we need to teach people?
The Gemara asks, but is one's father's father obligated to teach him Torah? But isn't it taught in a Barita that the verse, and you shall teach them to your sons, indicates, but not your sons' sons? And how do I realize, i.e., understand the meaning of the verse, but make them known to your sons and your sons' sons? This serves to say to you that whoever teaches his son Torah, the verse ascribes him credit as though he taught him, and his son and his son's sons until the end of all generations.
Which makes sense. I mean, if you have a son that's off the derrick, what are you going to do? Give up on your grandchildren? I mean, this is what we're supposed to be teaching our children, so that it stays, it doesn't fade away.
The Gemara answers that the Tana of this Baraita stated his opinion in accordance with the opinion of that Tana as it is taught in another Baraita from the verse, and you shall teach them to your sons. I have derived only that you must teach your sons. From where do I derive that there is an obligation to teach your sons' sons? The verse states, but make them known to your sons and to your sons' sons. If so, what is the meaning when the verse states your sons, which implies only sons? This limitation teaches your sons, but not your daughter. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says, anyone who teaches his son's son Torah, the verses ascribes him credit as though he received it from Mount Sinai, as it is stated, but make them known to your sons and to your sons' sons. And just opposed to it is the phrase in the verse, the day when you stood before the Lord your God in Horeb, as Horeb is Mount Sinai. The Gemara relates, once Rabbi Chia bar Abba encountered Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi and saw that he had placed an inexpensive covering on his head and brought his child to the synagogue to study. Rabbi Chia bar Abba said to him, what is the reason for all this fuss, as you are in such a hurry that you did not have time to dress yourself properly? Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said to him, is it insignificant that which is written, but make them known to your sons? And just opposed to it is the phrase in the verse that states, the day when you stood before the Lord your God in Horeb. The Gemara comments, from this moment onward, Rabbi Chia bar Abba would not taste meat, meaning he would not eat breakfast before he had read to his child and added to the child's study from the day before. Similarly, Rabbi Bar Rav Huna would not taste meat before he had brought his child to the study hall. Rab Safra says in the name of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Hanaya, what is the meaning of that which is written, and you shall teach them diligently to your sons? Do not read this as Beshinan Tam, which is the root Shinun Nun, which indicates a repetition. Rather, read it as Beshi Lashantam, with the root Shin Lamet Shin, related to the word Shalosh. This means that one must study, review, and study again, therefore, thereby dividing one's study into 3 parts.
Now, again, Rambam doesn't give us his sources, so I don't know if he derives the final halacha from here or from elsewhere. The Kesef Mishnah attempts, not always successfully, to find out where he gets it from. But what Rambam says is you should divide your learning into 3 parts. Torah, the law, and then how did we arrive at the law, which I take to mean Torah is obviously Torah. Law being Mishnah, the final rulings of the Sanhedrin. And how did we arrive there? That would be Gemara. So he also says, so the example that they give in Mishnah Torah is that if you have 12 hours in your day of sunlight and you work for 3 hours, It's a pretty good job if you can work 3 hours and support your family off of it, but that would leave you 9 hours available. So you can spend 3 hours studying Torah, 3 hours studying the Mishnah, and 3 hours studying the Talmud. I personally have nowhere near 9 hours a day available, and I don't spend near that much time studying, but that's the example that he uses. This could be where he gets that from.
You went low whenever you said the three study methods. So Torah, Halakha, what was the third?
Yeah, Rambam
How we
calls it,
derive it?
he calls it Torah, law, and yeah, how did we arrive at that law? So that to me means Torah, Mishnah as the law, and Gemara as the conversation of how did we arrive at that final law. But that's how he articulates it. The law, the Torah, the law, and then how we arrived at it.
And
Okay, where were we? Oh, that's the one we just read. Okay, so we're here.
And and okay, I'm sorry, I can't read right now. I have to get my
All right, no
child.
problem. No problem. I'll take over. Thank you, Yana. So, in light of this statement, the sages said that a person should always divide his years into three parts, as following: a third for Bible, a third for Mishnah, and a third for Talmud. The Gemara asks, how can a person divide his life this way? Who knows the length of his life, so that he can calculate how long a third will be? The Gemara answers no. It's necessary for one's days. One should divide each day in his life in this manner. And this is where I think Rambam brings the example. If you have 12 hours available today, 3 hours to work for money to provide, that leaves you 9 hours available. So you can study Torah for 3 hours. You can study the Mishnah, which is the Halakha, for 3 hours, and 3 hours for the Gemara to discuss how did they get to that final ruling.
I can
Most of us,
read the next one.
okay, yeah, go ahead.
What were you gonna say? Most of us?
Yeah, most of us don't pay our bills off of 3 hours of working at our occupation and don't have 9 hours to study the rest of the day. There are some that do, good on them, but most of us don't have that kind of time.
Yeah.
But that's describing Rambam's view of what would be the ideal. I think most of us live in less than ideal conditions at this point, but this was there to teach you what would be the ideal for those who can.
Therefore, a sec. Okay. Therefore, because they devoted so much time to the Bible, the first sages were called those who count Sepharim because they would count all the letters in the Torah, as they would say that the letter Vav in the word belly is the midpoint of the letters in the Torah scroll. The words diligently inquired, Darosh, Darash, are the midpoint of the words in the Torah scroll. And the verse that begins with, then he shall be shaven, is the midpoint of the verses. Similarly, in the expression, the boar out of the wood ravages it. The ayin in the word wood, Yair, is the midpoint of the Psalms. With regards to its numbers of letters. The verse, but he being full of compassion forgives iniquity, is the midpoint of the verses in the book of Psalms.
Okay, now there are some rabbis that teach that the rabbis today are like donkeys compared to the rabbis in the Talmud. This to me um, is not how I would express it. I mean, the more generations we have, the more people we have studying it, the more we've learned, the more we can review, the Gaonim, the Gedolim, the great ones that have studied this stuff. We now have technology. You can look for a word and find out every time it's used. So it seems that we should be more knowledgeable, not less. Rabbi Chaim Ovadia gives an example when he was talking about elevating rabbis into the Talmud to an unhealthy level. He gave an example of how the rabbis in the Talmud admit they don't even know how to do things. And they ask other people, does anyone know how to do this? And he says there's an example where they said, go ask the guy, he's the head of a yeshiva in Babel. I think he knows how to do it. So listening to that shiur, I thought he made a great point. But I don't think he gave the specific example. Maybe he did. Maybe he was talking about the Korban Pesach. But either way, that lesson stuck with me when I heard him teaching that. So we're going to find an example of it coming up right here. And I'm not sure if this was the example that Rabbi Avadia was giving or if this is just a additional example of where it exists in the Talmud.
Rav Yosef raises a dilemma. Does the vav of the word belly belong to this side or to this side? Is it part of the first or second half of the Torah? The sages said to him, let us bring a Torah scroll and count the letters. Didn't Rabbi Bar Chana say, with regard to a different issue, they did not move from there until they brought a Torah scroll and counted the letters? Therefore, we can do the same. Rav Yosef said to them, they were experts in the deficient and plain forms of words and therefore could count the letters precisely. We are not experts in this regard, and therefore we will be unable to resolve the question even if we were to count the letters.
So this is not saying that they don't know anything. They're saying there's a certain area that they are not experts in. Fair point. We were just discussing, the different types of korbanot. I'm like, we don't do this today. So I'm not an expert in that. It's something that none of us do because we're in the diaspora. We don't have a temple. We don't have the altar. We're not able to do it. So here, they don't elevate themselves to unhealthy levels. They say themselves, hey, this is an area where I'm not an expert in. I think that's a very, very humble lesson there.
Similarly, Rav Yosef raised a dilemma. Does the midpoint of the verses in the Torah, which is, then he shall be shaven, belong to this side or to this side? Abe said to him, even if we cannot count the letters, we can at least bring a Torah scroll to count the verses. Rav Yosef explained, we are not experts about verses either, as when Rav Ahabar Ada came from Eretz Israel to Babylonia. He said, in the west, Eretz Israel, they divide this following verse into 3 separate verses. And the Lord said to Moses, behold, I come to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you, and may also believe you forever. And Moses told the words of the people to the Lord. Perhaps there are other verses that we do not know how to divide properly. The sages taught 5,888 verses are the verses in the Torah scroll. Psalms has 8 more verses than that, and Chronicles has 8 fewer verses than that. The sages taught the verse states, and you shall teach them diligently. The root shin nun of vishinantam should be understood as meaning sharp, i.e., that matters of the Torah should be sharp and clear in your mind, so that if a person asks you something, do not stutter in uncertainty and say an uncertain response to him. Rather, answer him immediately as it is stated.
All right, so that is Kiddushin 29a, b, and 30a. So let's go back to YouTube. What was the claim here? Channel. This one. 29b. And he even put quotation marks. This is what we're going to find. A woman is a sack full of poop. Nowhere to be found where you claim or before or after, but I do appreciate you putting this actually because as a result, I went to look at it and I learned some things. So very positive experience for me. I got nothing but positive education out of, looking that up and trying to, ready to take on your claim if it was there, but it was not. So I actually appreciate it. And if you scroll my channel, I don't know you, I don't know anything about you, but I suspect you might find some things that you agree on.
Was that guy in the comments that you just had the video up, was he basically saying that all of that is okay?
Well, he's claiming that, yeah, that's what the Talmud is going to say. And that's the source that he used, is what we just read. And
I
his
also heard, oh, sorry, go ahead.
this is where he gets his claim from. He's quoting a book called The Talmud Unmasked, where
So
the
when
author didn't even know Hebrew or Aramaic. So that was his claim.
so when Christians say there are questionable things in the Talmud,
Look
maybe
them up. Let's see if they're
it's,
really there.
yeah, well, he's not helping the case situation.
By putting fake Talmud quotes out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, of course. But the lesson here is just because somebody makes that claim that it's there doesn't mean that it is. I tell the story about a guy who said, the Talmud says this in Avodah Zarah. It's like, all right, well, what does Avodah Zarah mean? He had no idea. It's like, don't worry about what it means. It just says this, and it defines a crime. Well, Avodah Zarah is something you'd be given the death penalty for. So imagine us going to an American law code saying, well, in America, this is defined as, okay, well, that means we're allowed to do it. It's in a section called felonies that are punishable by execution. You can get the death penalty for it. But here, this is not even well, I don't know the language. I don't know how to translate it. It's taken out of context. It's just not there at all. We didn't even find anything else negative about women or anything. So, I mean, don't just believe just because somebody says it. And again, I mean, he doesn't even know how to spell things correctly. Bava Metzia, he spells different ways. But anyway, if you want to comment dumb stuff in my on my channel, go ahead. I mean, it's a free country. You have freedom of speech. But if you look at some of these videos, you might even agree with me on some things. So, like I have one, the Israeli flag problem is one. How about 7 pages of bullet points about Zionism? Comment there. My understanding is the more comments you get, the more, the algorithm will promote my videos and people will see it. So by all means, continue commenting, but boost me in the algorithm on things that you agree with. If you don't have anything intelligent, you just want to put dumb stuff like that, go ahead, put it in the comment section. But I'm not going to dedicate more time. I mean, I've already spent however long this video is.
So then why do certain Jewish people say is quote unquote anti-Semitic that there are verses, well, to point out the fact that there are verses in the Talmud that are questionable, and this guy is sitting here quoting things like that. And
Well, this
he's
guy is
so-called,
quoting something that's not even there. It's a fake quote that doesn't exist. But are you saying that people are making the claim that it's anti-Semitic to point out things that
to
are that
point it
actually
out,
are
yeah.
there? Yeah, yeah. A
Well,
lot of anti-Semites will use that. Um, but okay, so for example, in the New Testament, it ascribes some blame to us for Jesus being killed. So is it anti-Semitic that it's there, or is it just an anti-Semite pointing out something that's there?
doesn't it
It's not.
also mention like him burning in hell or something?
Yeah, yeah, that's there. That's there. So, I mean, there's things that are there. I mean, we shouldn't run from that. We shouldn't hide from that. But what are you going to do? Censor it? Say you're not allowed to point out what the Talmud actually says?
Well, I read an article. It wasn't Dennis Prager. It was someone, but he was basically calling who anti-Semite because she pointed out those verses in the Talmud about Christianity.
Yeah. So does that mean that if you say something that Jews don't want to hear, that they don't like the narrative, it's true, does that make you an anti-Semite? Because if that's the case, God is an anti-Semite, right? He says negative things about us. We're stiff-necked people, so much so to the point he wanted to destroy us. He says specifically, we're not, the greatest people. He says that we are getting the land conditionally because the inhabitants were so wicked that the land cannot stand them. In fact, that we are the least of all nations. So is God an anti-Semite? Is it anti-Semitic to point out what the Torah says? I say no. Now, anti-Semites will choose things that fit their narrative to point it out. But, I mean, if it's there, it's there. It's not anti-Semitic to point out. I mean, look, this whole thing, this video here. Zionist uses anti-Semitic tropes against anti-religious Jews. I've titled it kind of salaciously, but anti-Semitic vocabulary is anti-Semitic, even if the non-religious anti-Semite claims to be a Jew. So, if you're going to use anti-Semitic claims, then you're an anti-Semite. But it's not anti-Semitic to point out what a Bible says. If that's present in the text, then it is there. We can't go around calling people an anti-Semitic because they know what the book says. It says what it says. There's people that like what it says. There's people that don't like what it says. It's not anti-Semitic if it's true and accurate and a Jew doesn't want to hear it. So that's my view on it. Let's just take accountability. Yeah, it says what it says. Should we take away freedom of speech and demonize people that know what it says? If that's the case, are you going to demonize all rabbis who know what the New Testament says? Are we now anti-Christian because we quote what the New Testament says? You're allowed to quote our books just like we're allowed to quote their books. Are there negative things in our books? Yes. But what we read today is not one of them. So this is what I mean. There's valid reasons why some Jews give non-Jews to not like us, but oftentimes that's not what anti-Semites are quoting. And I always wonder why. With all the examples that are there, why do you resort to things like this that are not even there? It's like you're destroying your own credibility in the conversation. But that's what some choose to use. All right, we'll continue the conversation after the recording, but I don't want to give anti-Semites ammo that they can use against us because there is some things that valid points that do exist, but I'm not going to advertise them. So we'll continue that after